Okay, I'm back again. Yay. That was so arduous. So sorry for the people that were on the stream before, but something happened with my, I don't know, the internet. I've just turned my modem on and off again, and hopefully it's going to be back again. So we were talking about moxibustion and what we could use for the change of season and how moxa might be useful for those kinds of things. We're also talking about stress for acupressure for stress, and questions are welcome in the stream, of course. So I'll write that in there. It usually takes people a while to jump on these things as well. So that's all good. Welcome to people that stick with me through these arduous times. Yeah. So anyway, we're going to talk about some things you can do as self-help for stress. Not just acupressure, but you can know those acupressure points. So you can press on them, but you can also combine that with essential oils. A lot of people like to do that. So you could use an essential oil that you know already helps for stress. So things like lavender is a good one. I've got some oils around here somewhere because here's one here that I like to use. This is called frankincense, and these are very grounding, so heavier, like just, it's got to be pleasant smell to you because you're going to put it on yourself. If you're going to use essential oils and you've never done them before, that particular oil, just do a little test. Either dilute some of the oil in a carrier oil or just rub it on like sort of the inside of your wrist to test if you have an allergy to it, like you'll know from, you know, it being there. Now, because I've done a lot of work with essential oils in terms of making products out of them, I'm just going to rub that frankincense on my forehead. So I actually woke up today with a bit of a headache, which is a bit annoying. So we'll try and see if we can acupuncture myself on the stream. People might find that a bit strange. But yeah, you can rub this on your neck. Now, where would you rub it? So between two muscles, you've got your sternocleidomastoid muscle coming at the front here and your trapezius coming up to the back. So if you don't know what those muscles are, you can Google them to have a look. But if you go behind your head and you feel that bone, just right under that occipital bone, there's a gap between those two muscles, and they're really big, bulgy kind of bands, and that's an easy place to find to do that. So you can even use tiger balm, not as a relaxing thing, but like just as a stimulating thing. So tiger balm's usually got like menthol and maybe camphor or clove oil or something like that in there. Anyway, so yeah, that I'm just rubbing that on there because of my headache, and so that might help with that. Yeah, those oils could be good. So you could use lavender. Lavender can also make you very sleepy, so that's good if you do want to sleep. But if you're kind of stressed and you don't want to fall asleep, I wouldn't recommend using lavender, you know, just as a matter of course. So I hope people can hear me properly. Please let me know if you can't or anything, because I've done a different setup just now. 1 2 1 2. Maybe we should turn that up higher because it's only got 2. I've just turned the microphone up more. Hopefully that's enough. I've just used it. I've just set it up a different way. We can hear you just fine. Great. Okay. Well, I don't need to turn it up more. Because if you were on the stream before, you would have realized that it was buffering. It was sort of cutting out. So I was like, I won't run the microphone and everything through OBS. I'll just run them 2 separate ways. And we'll see if that works, and it seems to be working. So I hope you're doing well, and yeah, if you have a question, you can ask a question. So I'm going to continue on talking about the stress stuff, and the other thing that kind of relates to stress and like, you know, in a roundabout a way is the concept of phlegm misting the mind. Now, in Chinese medicine, that's a concept, right, called phlegm misting the mind. So if you've been on this channel before, you would have heard about dampness. A lot of people have those questions. Well, what about dampness? Phlegm is a similar concept to dampness, but it's more when that dampness is in your head. And it's, look, we could get stuck on technicalities, but if you're at a practitioner level, it's kind of a different thing. But in a general sense, it acts in the same way as the body as dampness does. So dampness tends to affect it in our digestion primarily, and phlegm tends to affect us, like phlegm, literally phlegm, you can cough up, right? So you could think of that as a type of dampness anyway in the chest. But when phlegm's misting the mind, you feel as if there's a cloud in your head. So that can be part of stress as well, because people can be like, well, I can't think clearly, and I'm just like their mind is kind of misted. And I wanted to talk about this concept because it's coming to the change of season, and there's a couple of points we can use on the stomach channel to kind of help us with that. So I'm going to see, let's see if we can do this. Let's see if I can do this. Midstream, pardon the pun. So if you look up a point called stomach 36, I'm just going to go on Google and see if I can find a little image of it and see if I can share that screen with you. Great. Okay. Oh, that's a good picture there. Okay. So if you just Google it and you find it, let me just see if I can do this. All right, hopefully you can see that now. Let me see if we can. Yes, you can. Good. Okay, so I've got to put this in the right spot there. There we go. So this point here, stomach 36, I'm going to put my mouse near it. This is below your knee, so that's your patella, right? So there's one point here, stomach 36, and the other point that we want to talk about is Fung Long, stomach 40. So the Fung Long, stomach 40 is out here. Now it's hard for a lay person to just sort of palpate the muscle, like this pink thing's the tibialis anterior muscle. But if you are into muscle palpation, then you can, if you know where that is, then that might help you. It's on the edge of that muscle. But the border that you like, the thing you can feel is the edge of your tibia, your bone, right? And this is one finger breadth off the bone, and then the second one is another finger breadth off the bone. So not quite a sun, which is a thumb measurement, but just a little bit off the bone. Now, it doesn't matter if you're exactly in the right spot, because the good thing with acupressure is that you can feel for the more painful point. And there's two reasons why I want to share this with you. Now, I'm going to try to put my leg up on the stool here. Let's see if this one works. I've got a high stool. Right, there we go. Get your leg up, Marie. I have to go even higher. Get the microphone out of the way. Bring that up a bit higher. Yeah. So, well, here we go. Stream gone wild. Now, this is my knee here. So just below the knee. If I put my four fingers below there, it's hard to do it on yourself, but you can kind of roughly feel that there's a little spot there. Now, what I'm saying that you should do is just massage down that area, right? So where that pink part is on the picture, you're massaging down there. Now, how you would do that, you could do the tapping like this. Okay, you could do bird pecking. You could do rubbing, just like rubbing it. You could do rolling and things like that if you're into Chinese massage. But those other techniques are just like easy to do on yourself. Now, because they're big points, right? They're larger areas, or the channel, then you don't have to be really specific, like, oh, here's a point on my hand, I've got to press this exact spot. You really want to get into the spots where it feels the most sore, the most, maybe there's tightness there or whatever. Now, there's two things that can do. One is in the change of season, stimulating the stomach 36 point, which is here on your leg. Now you can look that up. There's heaps of things like that. There's probably even YouTube channels that show you how to find it a bit better than what I just did. That's a point for the change of season. So it's helping adjust our body for the change of season, and it's also helping to it's used for promoting your immune system, especially when you're coming into winter. I realise a lot of people watching this are not in Australia like me. They're in the US or the UK, and they're probably not coming into you're probably coming out of it. But it still can be useful. And spring in Chinese medicine is considered the origin of 100 diseases. what that means is these diseases or these illnesses can kind of be dormant in us, and when our yang comes out to the surface, they kind of appear. So this is where people get allergies, like hay fever or something like that happen. Okay, and then the Fung Long, the stomach 30. I think this is actually, for some reason, it's kind of, I don't know if it's opposite. Yes, for some reason it's opposite for you. This is a cock up. This is a kind of fail. Yeah, so just only realised that now that it's back to front. But anyway, that stomach 40 is a point that helps with your like phlegm misting the mind, and particularly like mental illness caused by phlegm misting the mind. So there's a indication for that point, a classical indication that says like this is the point that's used for when a person wants to ascend to high places, take off all their clothes and sing. So I'm sure you can imagine what that is. Yeah, so there we go. I'm back now. I'll take that thing off the thing. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask it. There's probably people here that want to ask something. You don't need to hear me prattle on about whatever I want to prattle on about. I do have some other questions that people wanted to ask, so we'll find some of those. I've had a couple of interesting questions on Instagram. Oh, and the announcement. Okay. Da-da-da-da. I want to get to 10,000 subscribers this year, and that's a big ask. We're at 5,500 now, so it needs to double this year. Not impossible. When I first started this channel, there was no subscribers. There was one person, and that was me. And so it's growing, and that's really great to see people engage in the channel. But actually, like when I look at the stats, over 80% of the watchers aren't even subscribed to the channel. So what are you doing? Why aren't you subscribing? So I've got a little competition that I'm going to run, and I'm going to put that in the link there. So I'm going to put that in the comments. So this competition is for when we reach 10,000 subscribers. I'm going to give away 10 courses worth $197 each, so almost $2,000 worth of course prizes. And you'll be able to do those courses at your own pace whenever you want to. You won't have to come into a live one. So you might have seen that I've been running some various courses, starting to do that, and really just to satisfy the need that people have been asking me these things for years. And so I've got a new one that's starting this Sunday, which is a live one, and it's called Better Gut Health with Chinese Medicine. And what that's going to teach you is in a 3-part, step-by-step, all the stuff I've talked about on the channel in a more logical way, but then there's other stuff that I wouldn't say on the channel that I wouldn't put on there. So it'll help you if you've sort of watched it and you've thought, oh, I really enjoy your videos about dampness or Chinese diet therapy, but I'm not sure where to start for myself. Even if, does this really apply to me? Like, who does this apply to? So there's some things that are generic that they kind of apply to everybody. And there's some things where you should be empowered with Chinese diet therapy if you are fully taught that system to know, okay, I can eat these foods in this season, they're okay, but in other seasons, they're probably not okay. Like raw foods is okay in some times and for some people, but in a general sense, like our bodies do better with less raw food. But there are times when raw foods are all right. And it's really the combination of are you eating some cooked with it or what season are you having it in? So we're going to answer all those questions in a really detailed way. So I'll put the link to that course in a minute when I find it. That's the one starting this Sunday. But if you join up to the free book chapter link, you'll get onto my email. You'll know about more courses when I make them. And I give people like an email saying the live stream's coming and stuff like that when I decide I'm going to do a live stream. And you'll get priority for your questions to be answered. And also you'll get a free book chapter of a book that I'm writing, which is like Living 100 Healthy Years with Chinese Medicine. And that book chapter is about yin and yang for self-care. So it's really explaining that basic concept of yin and yang. And that book chapter is what the first I've based a whole course on that kind of chapter of that book as well. So there's a lot of value that you can get for free just by joining up there. And then that's the way to enter the competition. So when we get to 10,000 subscribers, if you're a subscriber on the channel, you've signed up to get the book chapter and you stay subscribed, you'll be in the draw. And it's all written down on the page there. So I'm not trying to hide anything or make it sneaky or anything weird. All right, so let's answer these questions. Weak bones in women under 30, can it be reversed? Can it be reversed? So I like to be optimistic about things, right? So one is you can't make a claim about something that you don't know. Like in these kinds of things, like I have a lot of like that. It's a very claim type of statement to say that yes, it can be reversed, or no, it can't be reversed. I'd like to think that you could. I think there's. It's illogical to think that you can prevent things from getting worse. And it comes back to this idea, like bones in Chinese medicine are a form of blood, and that it's like a dense form of blood, right? So as we age, our blood dries out. And so therefore it makes sense that our bones dry out. And then that's what makes them weak. They become brittle because of that dryness. Now, bones are a dryness thing, right? But they're not like an old dry bone, because otherwise we would be, that's what happens when we die, right? But they are a dense, so they're like a dense form of water or a dense form of blood in Chinese medicine, right? So you'd want to do those anti-aging type of things, which one thing is it requires a commitment to stay on the course, to keep doing that. And I don't know whether you can reverse something, but I'm sure that you could prevent it from getting worse. And that's also a hard thing to measure, because in a research study, let's say, how can you show that you've prevented something from getting worse unless you let some people just go about their life as normal? And you'd have to study these people over, a lot. It'd have to be a longitudinal study, because there's nothing in Chinese medicine that would like give you that instant quick thing. It's lifelong commitment. So you'd have to have people involved in like a 30-year study where they've committed to doing these life things for 30 years versus people who haven't done those life things. So that's why there's no research to show that, because one is it's hard to get participants. Well, firstly, that research company has to be around all that time and have money and funding to keep these people in the study like that. That wouldn't have to necessarily be 30 years, but these are things where you commit to those practices because it's healthy for you in a general sense, and hope that your body has the resource. Well, no, you know that your body has the resource, but you're hoping that by facilitating the optimal conditions, that your body is then going to go in and do the things that it needs to kind of do. Unfortunately, Chinese medicine's really good at prevention and less good at treatment. Now, it's still really good at treatment, but that means it's awesome at prevention, right? Whereas Western medicine doesn't really have a lot of preventative things, right? Their idea of prevention is like, well, you've got precancerous cells, so we'll cut them off. And so that's a prevention, right? Now, that's still a prevention, but it's not like saying, well, if you lived a certain healthy way, you would never get those precancerous cells, or you might be less likely to get them. Or they don't even mention things like why those precancerous cells come there because of, too promiscuous sex or something like that. Like, they're not that everyone gets those cells from that stuff. But what I'm saying is there's a lot of things in health practices that people just wouldn't want to do. They just don't want to. They want to be told that that's what they have to do. They don't want to do that stuff. Like, to live as a sage and live. So now you don't have to do that all the time, but like all these things that you're doing that are less beneficial to your body, they're costing you in some way. Now, I'm talking to myself as well. Like, I don't live as a sage, right? I don't like, I'm not I do things that, probably are unhelpful. Like, they're not as, like there's a balance of choices that you make, right? So you might say, yeah, I'm going to have this, like I love creamy pasta. That's what I had for dinner last night. And that's, dampening, but like I don't have that every day. And if I was really committed to getting rid of dampness, or let's not that I have dampness, but if I was really committed to like losing weight or something, I wouldn't have any creamy pasta, but I love creamy pasta. So it's a balance between what benefits you love doing and you enjoy that, and how committed you are to the health goals that you have and things like that. But in general, there's a pathway back to health, right? So that's kind of what you want to get back to. And it's good to have times or seasons in a year where you say, okay, I'm going to just really stick to it this time, like for these next few months or whatever period of time that is. So that's probably my answer. A very long-winded answer to weak bones in women under 30. Now, the other thing is, like, it's probably worthwhile, even if you haven't already, go and have a be checked with your GP for like hormonal blood tests and things like that to check, is there something there that's like massively wrong or massively missing, out of balance, that could be addressed now. Now, do you have to address that with HRT? Not necessarily. Like, you could look at that from you could then go to a natural medicine person who deals with hormonal imbalance naturally, and try naturally, before you have to go on to hormonal interventions. But that could be part of the reason, right? Like, genetics is part of Chinese medicine, right? Some people are just born with certain constitutions and things like that. So cool, that's a good question. Bill C, is generalized anxiety involved with the liver, with the little liver organ? What is generalized? Is generalized anxiety involved with the little liver org? Its meridian? Oh, so this is a big question. So in a general sense, if you're thinking, I'm not sure what you're exactly asking, but like, there's channel problems and there's organ problems. Now, organ problems can be treated through the channels, and that's how we do it with acupuncture. We don't go, oh, you've got a wood element, liver wood problem, so we're going to needle your liver. No, how do we access the liver? We needle the channel. And the points along the channel have functions relating to what that organ does. So, for instance, the liver stores blood. What does that mean? When you go to sleep, blood returns to the liver. It's nourishing blood. So therefore, you wake up and you're feeling refreshed, and your skin looks good and all that sort of stuff. That's all relating to liver blood. So if the liver wood aspect, so the wood element, isn't doing its job of storing blood properly, then a person might get or let's say they had bad sleep, they're not going to be able to store blood, so that would affect their liver. And then the heart, the mind, might not be able to go into the liver. Let's say it doesn't go into the liver, but it goes into blood, like it goes down and rests and be nourished by blood, because the liver's not doing its job of creating nourishing blood. So there's less nourishing blood for the mind to kind of rest in. And that can lead to an anxiety kind of problem. So, the generalized anxiety disorder, like as in a Western medicine disorder, there can be lots of different ways there's different patterns of disharmony that plays out in. And often the liver's involved because of blood. That's probably the best way to answer that question. Just to remind people that I can't give individual advice. I don't mind these kind of questions. Obviously, I welcome the questions. That's what the stream's for. But sometimes these theoretical questions, I might not be able to. It's hard with a comment, right? We might not be able to. We might need to ask a little bit more back and forth. All right. So someone says, is there a trick for fires to get the respect to? Hang on. Is there a trick for fires to get to respect a routine and stick to it? I mean, like as in fire element people. And then later on down the thing, she says, thank you so much for the channel. Oh, that's lovely. It's great, a comprehensive reference. I try. And if you're enjoying the channel, you're going to love the courses that I'm doing. So if people are interested in doing that and you've just jumped on the stream now, then click on that link to get the free book chapter, and then you'll be in the flow and you'll find out what I'm doing with the courses and things like that. So for fire elements to get into a routine, is that what you mean? Like fire element people to get a routine? So one aspect of the 5 elements characteristics is, well, all of us have the other elements. We all have those abilities, just maybe haven't tapped into them. And sometimes you need to actually find another element who's really good at something and learn from them. Now we think about that every day without thinking of it as an element. Like if I want to learn how to do something, I don't go and ask someone who's really bad at it and say, well, could you teach me? You're also bad at it. Why don't we learn together? Why don't we help each other? No, you find someone who's good at it and you learn from them. Now, what can sometimes be frustrating is a person who's just naturally good at it. They might not be able to tell you how they do it. They're just like, well, I just do it. What's wrong with you, right? So a routine. So I'm not sure exactly. You live with a water. Yeah, exactly. No way he can teach me a routine. Yeah, so water elements are these typical nutty professor types that might be up all night and then sleep at the wrong times, and if they're left to their own devices and things like that, right? So there's an idea of like, I think it's a good strategy. One is to embrace your element, who you are, right? Because I don't think we should be rejecting who we are, right? There's strengths that come from that, and be good at that, right? And then the alchemy kind of thing is like, well, let me be all the elements. Like, let me transcend that. I'm not just bound by that one element, right? And you could look up that podcast. I had Leda Herman on the channel probably almost a year ago now, maybe. And she's got a thing called the Alchemy Learning Center, and a thing called Inspired Action, a podcast, and they've got stuff you can look up there or on particular elements and transcending through these different journeys and stuff like that. And that's super relevant to this question, right? So I'm just probably should say I'm not the expert on this, but making, for one, like whether you're a fire element or any elemental person, like there's 2 ways to think of it. Like, well, fire element people like socialization, right? So, or think about what you do, what you do, even if you're not a fire and you're listening to this thing and you're thinking, how could I make that change I want to make? Well, what are your strengths? How to incorporate some of those strengths into the thing you want to do, right? So if you're sociable, so you're probably going to get some sense of purpose and reward out of like involving other people in what you're doing. A team, routine, like other people are doing it. You might actually find a benefit. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, maybe that's not you, but like you might actually get a benefit from, knowing that other people know that you're doing it, right? These are the people that are like happy to, be out there and promote something on social media because they get something out of the socialization aspect of that, or even if it's just in a closer kind of group of people. Yeah. And then when you try to make a change with something, it's sometimes a really big overwhelm happens because you try to do everything at once, or you think I have to do all of these things that are so far away. So let's say you're sort of here in life and you think I want to be here, and there's this massive gap to cross, and you're like, how am I going to do that? Like, I don't even have any wood to build a bridge. I don't even have it. Like, how am I going to get across to that area, like over to that place? So you've just got to go slowly and do one thing. So you might think, yeah, I want a routine. Like, what is something about your routine that you'd like to change? Maybe it's sleep. So start with sleep and think, for this week, I'm going to go to bed at every night at the same time, no matter what. Like, I'm definitely going to do that. And the other way there's different ways of motivation. So you have intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is you're doing something just because you love doing it and you don't need a reward for it. You just love doing it. And you have extrinsic motivation, whereas you're motivated by a reward or something else. So as a fire person, you could reward yourself with something that fire people like pleasure, treat yourself, 2011, like go and treat yourself, go for a spa, something like that. Right. Okay. I've done the thing that I wanted to do. And now you shouldn't have to reward yourself for everything you do, but that may have helped you to establish a routine, like even just doing something for a week. It's really not going to become a habit until you've done it for a few months. But you would have to pick something, right? Okay, sleep or meals, right? Every day I'm going to have breakfast. So I do this with my patients often. If they don't have regular diet and they're not able to stick to a routine of it, I'm just like, okay, let's just start with breakfast. I want you to have a breakfast every day. Something for breakfast. So they might have 2 or 3 choices. They might have, the healthiest choice would be something cooked. That takes time. They might not be able to do that every day. A hard-boiled egg. At least there's something, right? I encourage people to have a protein kind of breakfast, but you get the gist of it, right? So you do something and you say, I'm committing to this no matter what. Now, if you commit to having a breakfast every day and go to bed at the right time and limit your TV to only 1 hour a day, or and it's too many things and you might not do any of them. So I just suggest you pick one and establish that and then move on. So Lizette says, yes, if I lead groups, I feel the responsibility, and so I do whatever I need to do to lead them well. Yeah. So maybe because that's accountability as well. Like you might find that you need to find someone to keep you accountable. And you might not want it in a public forum, right? So, or you may want that. You may think, I don't want to let these people down, because if you're especially a charismatic person, yeah. And look, that's actually a really powerful leadership tool. I mean, you have to just do that on your own discernment to be vulnerable with people and say, hey, and especially if you're doing that voluntarily, you're choosing to be vulnerable. Like it's different to being exposed where someone's like, oh, there's something wrong with you. It's a scandal, right? You're just like, hang on a minute, group. I'm not actually perfect. I have this problem. You don't have to say it like that, but I have this thing and I want you to hold me accountable to this. Or you're going to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do something and I want you to hold me accountable to it. Different things work for different people in terms of motivation. That's something that I was teaching at college like this the last couple of weeks, is these different models of motivation and things like that. And I've taught those things before, but it always makes, like, it brings it back up in your mind when you're thinking about it regularly. And we could talk more about that stuff. I like talking about that. Okay, so then we've got another question back here. Hi Marie, this is from Rebecca. Is circulatory problems a heart pathology or a liver pathology in Chinese medicine, or both? Yeah, so there could be a few different ways. So circulation, or in one sense, liver or the wood element moves qi. So it has a spreading and a moving quality. So the wood is kind of the driving force for movement in the body, right? So wood and wind are like a synonymous thing, especially in classical Chinese medicine. So you have a natural wind in your body, right? Not passing wind, but that's also a natural wind. But you have a natural wind of, like, peristalsis is one of those movements. And the circulation, like your heart actually doing its pumping, you could see that as that movement, that regular rhythmical movement is a wood aspect thing. And when we check people's pulses, like the way how do I know that? Because the treatment for an irregular pulse is like the chief wood herb, which is guija, right? Cinnamon is kind of the herb that's used to regulate the heart. Now, if you take a lot of cinnamon, it will super increase your heart, right? Like too much, a massive amount of. So if someone had a sluggish heart rate, or it was irregular, as in it was like not beating regularly and sort of I don't know if you can hear that. I'm probably not tapping close to the microphone, but not regular, like skipping beats or things like that. Not always, but often. Now, don't do this yourself or anything, because we wouldn't just use cinnamon by itself. That'd be silly. It's in the formula, yeah, and it has to be within the right formula, but that's the method, right? Cinnamon method. And the cinnamon is, the guaja is the wood of wood, right? It's the wood herb, like it symbolizes wood. And so that's one way of thinking about it, right? So the ability for circulation to happen through the movement is a wood aspect. So not so much maybe the liver, like the liver is wood, but you want to think about it in a broader sense than just the liver. So it can be it's the gallbladder. It's like, the reason why I find it easier to talk about elements rather than organs, and this is more of a classical thing than a TCM thing. Like in TCM, I've learned TCM for years and years before I did classical Chinese medicine. It makes it less confusing because it's its own system, right? Like no one's like, oh, the wood this, and they're not confused. Like when you say liver, people say, oh, do I have cirrhosis, or have I got a liver? Am I going to die? Like, do I need a transplant? Like, it's easy to confuse it with the Western medicine liver. So if we think about it, wood liver, like the wood element is that aspect. And then, yeah, okay, you need a heart to circulate. So your physical heart is still part of it. If your heart muscle itself, or your heart is weak, or the vessels that it's using for the circulation, if there's a weakness there, or there's stagnation within those vessels, like blood clots or plaque, or those things can be blood clots is related to blood stasis, which generally happens because you had stagnant chi or stagnant energy first, and then blood clots. So there is a relationship of your heart, but it's the heart, the fire heart system in Chinese medicine is probably, like, it does relate to the structure of the heart for sure, but it much more relates to, when we think about the heart, they consider that the shen as well. And there's a lot more indications with the heart, which we would in Western medicine think of the mind, like anxiety or insomnia, or mental restlessness, or poor even memory problems and things like that, like cognition, those things, like being able to think through problems clearly. That's all considered part of the shen. Now, there are aspects of, like, say, for instance, thinking through problems clearly could be a yi spleen aspect as well. It's not just one thing, but yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Feel free for people to ask other questions. It's very early. Well, not early. It's 11 o'clock now in the morning here. So I'm like, I feel like I need another coffee. I'm not gonna get one. So yeah, hopefully you've been enjoying the stream. I'll put the link to the new course that I'm doing. So I'll just make that little announcement again for people that maybe have only just come on here, about the course, the giveaway. So you can win. I'm going to give away 10 courses worth $197. So almost $2,000 worth of prizes when we get to 10,000 subscribers. So you need to subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. It's a really good way to support the channel, support me, by just subscribing and sharing it with other people that might be interested in Chinese medicine. And so you go into the draw to win the prize by clicking the link that I put a second ago, the one that says free book chapter. So you can get I'll put up the link again now. You can get a chapter of my new book that I'm making. And this is about yin and yang for self-care. So it's really the fundamental aspects of yin and yang, and how does that relate to thinking about how should we live in the environment in health in different seasons, and sleep is a big part of what I talk about in that. And then, so once we get to 10,000 subscribers, then I'm going to give away these courses, and everything will be happy. Everyone will be happy. So Katie says, this is the bones question again. Yeah, I believe it's partially genetics. My mum's my mum's bones went early. I believe mine was worsened by birth control, not ovulating, going easy on myself, trying to nourish and rebuild blood. Yeah. So, I mean, there's the things that you would notice. So if you do these longevity type of practices, let's say, or you're doing things that are trying to help repair, nourish your bones, which is essentially nourishing blood. Well, firstly, you'd want to address any patterns of disharmony that are already there, like any yang pathologies. So this is what a practitioner would kind of do with you. So they'd be like, by checking your pulse, they'd be knowing what's there, right? So if there's any cold or flu things or lingering pathogens, those things have to be kind of cleared up before you can really get to the nourishing blood. Now, you can still do blood nourishing with foods as you go along anyway. Bone broth is probably the primary thing. If you're a vegan or a vegetarian, this is where it becomes more difficult. Not impossible, but just more harder. Chicken stock bone broth if you can't get beef bone broth. Organic beef bones when you're making that, right? Other products you could try are things like purple foods, darker coloured foods that are like fruit and veggies, so things like beetroot, purple cabbage, purple carrots, these kind of things. Root vegetables nourish the earth. So then we're not just thinking about, okay, I'm going to eat 5 foods to make my bones strong. You want to make sure your spleen and stomach are working to their optimal level of in digesting, so that then whatever else you put in there, your body starts to absorb that better. And that's kind of what I'm going to be teaching in the course, in the gut health course, is how to like set up your digestion so that, like, if you do go out of balance, you can go, right, what should I go back to? And if you're really out of balance, like, you can go onto what they call the Qing Dan diet, like the clear bland diet, where you're just having very clear, like clear soup almost, right? Warm cooked foods, and there's other kinds of methods, almost like a fasting, but you're still eating foods, but you're just restricting everything so that you can work out if is there anything that's causing my body to go out of balance, and then you can kind of add back the things that you were having, and that's how you'll kind of know whether something was irritating you or not. That's one way of kind of thinking about it. So you've got to get that basis right, because you could be spending a lot of money on supplements. Collagen's another thing. And that collagen is in bone broth. That's one of the biggest parts of it. Like, it's in, you're literally having the bones, right? So you're extracting the nutrients from the bones, and that's probably the most thing you could have to have that. This is a good question. What would constipation be considered as in TCM? How is it viewed? What is the cause? Yeah, all right, constipation. So I want to take a little break for a second. I wish I could take the microphone in the other room. I need to get another coffee. We'll talk about constipation. I'm just going to take like a 1 minute break, so I'll be back in a sec. Awesome, I'm back. If you came on this stream earlier, like I had to stop and start it, and it's like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, I didn't make any more coffee. And, yeah. Anyway, so constipation has two reasons, two primary reasons in Chinese medicine why it can happen, and constipation is actually one of the easier things to treat in Chinese medicine. Like, it seems to be easier than diarrhea, because in a general sense, diarrhea is like your body getting too wet, too moist. In constipation, often the body's getting too dry. And the reason why people get these different conditions could be constitutional. Like, some people tend to just get more damp and more wet, and some people do get more dry. And the other aspect of constipation is lack of movement. So, you know, think about how you treat constipation in Western medicine. They either purge you, right? So you take a laxative and this really violent kind of thing happens and it just kind of comes out. That's a purgative type of treatment. Now, what Chinese medicine has that as well. And that's sometimes needed, right? But every time you use a purgative kind of treatment, then that can cause detriment to the body. So it's needed if there's a big blockage there. And this can happen maybe even with kids. They can get really constipated and just not be able to go because it just gets all blocked and very painful and things like that. So the treatment ways in Chinese medicine could either be to purge things or increase the peristalsis, increase the movement of your gut, or to moisten the bowels. So moistening the bowels is the least drastic way, the least detrimental way. You know, it's an easier way to try if that might help to sort of relieve some of the symptoms earlier on without too much detriment. So how would you moisten the bowels? So you can use oil and seeds. Now, seeds can irritate the bowel as well. So think about things from a paleo perspective. They say, yeah, never have seeds because they have lectins in them. We're kind of getting a little bit off of the Chinese medicine track exactly, but that's something to consider. Now, what are the seeds that Chinese medicine uses? Hemp seeds. They use either hemp seed oils, like we use that now because in some places hemp seeds can still be controversial or hard to get. Or hemp seeds. So I would encourage my patients to take a teaspoon of the hemp seeds a day, see if that helps, and if that doesn't help, they could double it, or take a teaspoon of oil. Now, it could be sesame seeds as well, or sesame seed oil, and that'd be the first place to start, and an easy way to go about it. Now, the second thing that can moisten, which is an easy food, is pears. Stewed pears or steamed pears. You could also do steamed or stewed apples. They've got to be cooked because you don't want there to be a cold aspect that you're applying to the gut at this point. You want it to be warm and moist. And then things like the moistening foods, right? So think if something contains more moisture, it literally is more moist than something that's dry. So staying away from dry foods like crackers and fried things, because there's a lot of dryness within that food there. And things that are moist tend to be like fruits. And fruits, obviously you're going to be able to get your bowels moving, but sometimes they can have a purgative effect as well. So that's one thing. Now, you could use massaging, so going with the bowels, if I just sort of stand up like this, going around this way. You can go like that, and you can do patting, this kind of open hand, like that movement around. So that's two ways. Now, constipation can also be caused by a lack of wood to move, like that's a lack of peristalsis. So if a person had almost like a deficiency of that wood energy, sometimes in TCM they call that liver qi stagnation, or liver qi stagnation invading the spleen. But it's actually really, the qi isn't moving. It could be because it's stuck, but it also could be because it's deficient. And we don't really see a pattern in TCM called deficiency of liver qi. But it's like a failure of that chi to be moving. So we want to get it moving. Now, one of the main points you could use is Hergu, large intestine 4. That's on your large intestine channel, which is your intestine, which is where the problem is. And it's also a chi moving point. So if we use this point with liver 3, and they call that, when you use those 2 points together, if you needle all 4 of them, they call them the 4 gates. And that point combination is used to stimulate the chi. Now, liver 3 and large intestine 4 are in a similar position, right? So on your foot, you can look that up. Anyway, my microphone's getting really muffled. Oh, maybe I'm too close to it. It might be distorting. Probably when I moved, I was putting too close to me. Thank you. This message holds for you. Yep. So hopefully you could understand that. Sorry about that. It's probably distorting. Is that better? I'll just put it out there. I think when I moved back, I got it too close. I got louder. Either one of those. Okay, so we go. So that's the constipation question. So you could either have a lack of movement, which you need the 4 gates. You need this large intestine 4 and liver 3. You could use the massaging going with the bowel, so in the clockwise direction. You could use stomach 36 that I was talking about in the previous stream. Was this one or somewhere? It might have been the previous stream or the start of this stream. So that using the stomach channel, right, on the leg, stomach 36 down, just downwards, or just massaging that stomach channel, that's a good one to do. So, yeah, Lizette says psyllium husks are great to add moisture. Yeah. So what the psyllium husks do is like they're literally just bulking the stool, right? So they're putting a substance in there, like those silica gels. Please don't eat that. When you put those things that soak up the moisture in certain places. Well, that's kind of what that does, and it makes the bowels kind of absorb the moisture there, so that the stool can kind of be bulked up and pushed out. So that's a good one to use. So look, sometimes it can be a combination of these things, like not just one thing that's the problem. They could have also, when you've had this for a long time, say to someone who's had diarrhea for a long time, your body becomes used to it, and it just works around that. And it becomes like your bowels are lazy, like you're not able to move as easily as regularly. So certainly diet-wise, your body likes regularity. So if this was a problem, try to have regular meals as best as you can, like 3 meals a day, even if it's only 2 meals a day, or 2 major meals a day and then a couple of smaller meals or something like that. Don't be grazing all day long, but regularity, it just likes that regularity. All right, so fire question again. When a fire gets blown out and falls into the earth, does it automatically mean that it will have a weak earth and will have digestive enzymatic deficiency? Okay, when fire gets blown out and falls into the earth. So I probably need to ask you, are you a practitioner? Or are you just like, where did you get that information from? Like, is that something you've read somewhere that can happen, or is that just what you're inferring might happen? So it's not really a way we would think about phrasing it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just not sure where you're getting the idea from. So we wouldn't say a fire could get blown out and fall into the earth, right? So fire generates earth, and if there isn't fire, you have wood, fire, earth, metal, water, that generating cycle. So fire isn't strong enough, then it's not going to be, like, it's not perpetuating enough fire for itself, then it wouldn't generate earth very well. So earth could be also weak as well. So it means that person would have a weakness of earth. Now, if you're talking about personality types, I'm not sure how much of this then follows through to the physicality in these flow-on effects. You would just have to look at the pathology that's there. So if a person came in and said, I've got weak digestion, and we could see they had a spleen, let's say they have PTC and they have spleen chi deficiency, or some symptoms that you say they're not digesting food properly, they're bloating, they might have diarrhea, they might have, I think we've said something that they have digestion enzymatic deficiency. So they might even have that. How would you know that? Because we're only not from a Western medicine diagnosis, so they've had to have had blood tests and things like that. Where's that come from is kind of practitioners will think about that to look at the cause of it. And there could be a pattern of fire not generating earth. So I'm not sure if that answers your question or not. Probably doesn't. But we wouldn't think about fire being extinguished or get drawn out and fall into the earth. But that might have been something that you picked up from another book or somewhere along the way, possibly. Hope the audio is good now. It probably shouldn't be buzzing out anymore. All right, if people have other questions, we can answer them. I know there's a little delay with the question and the comments. So, if you're still there, you can maybe clarify what you were asking about the fire question. Cool. All right, I'll find this course thing that I was trying to send out to people. Yeah, so I've got a new course that's starting this weekend, and great, it was coming up on the other page. Extinguished fire. Okay, I'm learning to become a naturopath. I took an introductory TCM course. I was told to be an extinguished fire. Right. Yeah. So I mean, it might be like fire. I don't know if you like. Where's that book? Oh, actually, yeah, that's good. If you're interested in that stuff, this is a good book to get a hold of. It's been around for a long time. You can get it from op shops, sometimes even like the secondhand stores. Get it secondhand on eBay or something. And they talk about like each element, and then when the element's in deficiency and when the element's in excess, or when the element's in balance. So if you were sort of extinguished fire, they might mean like, yeah, the element's in deficiency, so there's not enough fire. So yes, it can have that flow-on effect, but when the stuff that they talk about in this book and those personality types, the constitutional types, are much more about mental health and personality type things rather than physical disorders, in terms of how they have that flow-on effect. I'm not a 5-element practitioner, so like I'm not an expert on it. So there may be someone else that could give you a better answer. Sorry. But yeah, you would look at the symptoms that a person has and then try to trace back what cause those symptoms are. Okay, good. All right. So yeah, any other questions are welcome. I'm just going to find this link to this course. Well, I don't know why I can't find it so easily, but it's life. So yeah, the course is starting on this Sunday. So I've got two things starting this Sunday. One is a 12-week course on Chinese diet therapy. It's the first time I've ever offered this, and it'll give you a comprehensive, all the knowledge of Chinese diet therapy that I would teach at a university level. You don't have to have studied Chinese medicine before to do it. So the first 3 weeks is also the mini course that I'm doing, the Better Gut Health. So it starts off with that, and that'll teach you what is the spleen and stomach about, what's that earth element about, how do we look after that to maintain our health through the different seasons of life. So what should kids eat, what should adults eat, what should older people, elderly people eat, to promote the various seasons of life that you're in. And that's an important thing. And then the course, if you enroll in a long course, the 12-week course, then we'll talk about things like foods as medicine, for like going through categories of food. So what are the properties of grains? What are the properties of fruits, nuts and seeds and vegetables and meats? So it's all well and good to sort of say, well, meat nourishes blood, but actually some meats are better for different types of nourishment, or different like there's lots of different ways of cooking the meats, and that could, like if you have steak and you fry it, that's much different to making a bone broth out of that same meat product, or making a stew out of it. If you're dry, you don't want to have more dryness. So we're going to talk about different cooking methods. What are the cooking methods that create moisture? What are the cooking methods that dry things out? And then how to apply that knowledge to modern diets. So let's say you're thinking, I'll do the fasting diet, or I'll do the paleo diet, or I might be a vegan or a vegetarian. Like, what are the benefits of that diet and the detriments of that diet from a Chinese medicine perspective? That's what we're going to be looking at. So I'm just going to pop those links in the description there. So this one is the 3-week course there, the first one, and then this one is the 12-week course. So these are all live, and if you can't rock up to the live one, you'll get access to the replay as well. Like, everyone gets access to the replay. But if you come into some of the lives over the time, you can ask the questions as we go. And if you enroll in the live version and you can't rock up to the live class, you can email me the questions and I'll answer them on the course in the next one. So I'd love to see you in the course. I'd love to meet some people on Zoom and see you there. And it's a great way to help yourself, like, look for stuff that, like, this knowledge is never going away. It never changes. Chinese medicine says a sage looks backwards. So it's evergreen knowledge. So it's going to help you in perpetuity, right, forever. So it's good to know it. It doesn't matter if you're older and you start learning it then. Yeah. So, Kate, what got you into TCM? Were you interested in it when you were a child? So I had a very strange journey into Chinese medicine, I think. I don't know why I studied it, actually. I never had acupuncture or Chinese medicine. My parents weren't, into any sort of alternative things. Like that, my parents weren't science-loving people either. Like, as in saying, it's only the Western way. But when I was in high school, I think when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor at one time. So when I was little, I did want to be a doctor. I used to do dress-ups and all that stuff, like kids do. And you were like, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. Now, by the time I was 9 or 10, I realised I'm never going to be a doctor because I'm not very good at maths. I was terrible at maths, really struggling with it. And, like, for instance, when I was in high school, I'd done the bottom level science class like 3 times. I still couldn't pass physics. I passed it in the end. I had to repeat the class like 2 or 3 times. And I really just wanted to learn it, but I don't know, my head wouldn't get around those concepts, so I just couldn't do it. Like, couldn't make myself think it's different. And don't know, like it's so strange to think like, why can't I just remember feeling so dumb that I couldn't understand it. So I just kind of put all that out of my head. I was like, well, I'm going to try to pursue, like there was other kids that, in year 8 in my first year of high school that were like, I'm going to be a doctor and I'm going to do medicine, and it was so competitive and all that. And at that point I'd be like, yes, I don't think I can do this. I don't. So I'm not going to try to pursue it or anything. And then it got to like choosing your subjects in school. And when I was in year 11 or 12, year 12 I think, it's the final year, you have to put in your application for university. And there was nothing that like appealed to me to study. I was like, oh, this is all just very lackluster. I lived in Perth, Western Australia, and this was like 1996 when I was in high school. And you couldn't even study chiropractic at university here. There wasn't even a chiropractic course. Now, if there was, I probably would have just enrolled in that because I would have been like, oh, that'll be something. I really wanted to go to university because I wanted that experience. But I wasn't like interested in psychology or anything particularly. So I enrolled in psychology in Perth because I was like, well, that's kind of like helping people, and it's a good general degree that'll kind of help, right? And at the same time, excuse me, I went to the year coordinator, which is the person that organises the courses and stuff, like helps you find what your career is going to be. And I said to her, look, is there anything else? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, is there anything else? That's what else can I study? Like, nothing that is appealing to me. And look, just imagine back then, like I remember, like we had the internet at home. It was the Dodo dial-up. It was very slow. YouTube was there, but it was just like cats on the piano, and there wasn't any exposure to other things really. It was just like I didn't know about Chinese medicine. I didn't know about alternative medicine, anything like that. I think I used to be into kung fu movies. I used to love Jet Li. I'd go down the video library, get these videos, bring them home and watch them, and I used to think, oh yeah, I'd love to be a kung fu. Love to be a kung fu master. And I used to see them do acupuncture on those things, and I used to think, oh, that's pretty cool. Anyway, I went to that year coordinator, and she was like, here's the books for the other states, like Sydney and Melbourne and stuff like that. So I went through them, and I honestly don't know whether it's because acupuncture starts with an A, and that was there. And I went through it, and I was like, acupuncture and moxibustion, what is this course? Like, what is this all about? So I enrolled in it, and I did my TEE, which is the end of 2-year exams, and I got my results, and I was accepted into this Chinese medicine course in Melbourne. And my mum was like, you're not going to go to Melbourne, just live by yourself. And I was like, I really wanted to, because I was like, oh, this is my chance to escape. Not that I had a bad family or anything. I was just like, I really want to. I'm a very independent person. I just was like, I'm going to crack my own life and live independently, right? And do my own thing. And my mum was like, no, I don't think that's the best thing for you. And our family wasn't very financial either, so I was like, I'm just going to have to pay for all this stuff myself, and I'm doing all this myself. I wasn't even sure how I was going to do it. And it just at the same time as that happened, some friends of ours told us about a course that was opening up in Perth, where I was living, and that was the first time that college was they were a naturopathic college, and they were going to be opening a course into Chinese medicine. And so I explained what Chinese medicine was by 2 naturopaths. Then after that conversation, I still remember that my mum took me over to their house, and because they were quite successful in their business, and they were like explained to me what it was and everything, and explained the difference between naturopathy and Chinese medicine. And after that explanation, I was like, I don't want to do naturopathy, I want to do Chinese medicine. And so I enrolled in a class and in a course, and I was told at college that if you enroll in this and you don't like it, you could easily change to be a naturopath. And I was like, okay, well, that's good, that keeps my options open. I kept the option I deferred the course that I got into in Melbourne, thinking if I don't like this course in Perth, I can go there. Anyway, so I rocked up at this course, and it was very expensive because it was all pay as you go. There was no HEX or like, it wasn't a university, it was a private college. So it was like, I was constantly doing things like selling my car to pay for my course fees, to catch the bus to the school, the train, and then getting enough money to buy a car, and then getting to pay my fees, and then selling the car. I probably did that 2 or 3 times in the process of, doing it. Because my parents weren't financial enough to just pay for it. I had to just kind of pay for it myself, and I helped out when they could. And I just was kind of trying to do my best. And I managed to get through the course, and I really loved it. I remember being in that class the first day and thinking, this is exactly what I want to do. This is awesome. This is perfect. And so that's how I started studying Chinese medicine. It's a very strange journey into it. I'd probably gone through the whole first year of Chinese medicine without even having any acupuncture, because I didn't even know any acupuncturists. Just it wasn't something that we would do as a family. So the first time I was acupuncture was from yourself, probably, or from another teacher, I can't remember exactly, but yeah, I wasn't a person who was going and having treatments and there was something wrong with me. And I was only 17. Yeah, there can be these weird things that just happen to you. And I am a very weird person. So weird things that happen to me. Anyway, so someone asked a legitimate question. That was a long answer for that one. But thanks, Katie. Okay, so Rebecca says, I suffer from spontaneous daytime sweating. And when exercising, I sweat like a tap. How do I control my pores for opening and closing in Chinese medicine? Is it a Xiaoyan issue? How do you differentiate it from an organ or a channel problem? Yeah, so sweating is a really interesting thing in Chinese medicine. So for one thing, sweating is like a lesser form of blood. So it's important to work on stopping that sweating. So there's a few things that can happen. One is you could be in a Xiaoyan pattern for sure, right? So especially things that like Xiaoyan patterns when they're chronic tend to be things that like coming and going, and these like what we call lingering pathogens. So things where like every time this happens, like it's a cyclical kind of pattern. And you really don't know what the cause of it is until a person's really checking your pulse, because that would tell us very clearly whether it is a Xiaoyan pattern or whether it is a more deficient pattern. At this point, it's probably unlikely to be a Yang Ming or a Yang kind of pattern. Right, it's more likely Xiaoyan or some kind of other more deficient situation. Now you can have a deficiency and then flare into a Yang pattern as well. So like a person can be going about their life being deficient, and yet when they have a flare up, and that's very common with that Yang, with that Xiaoyan, they're flaring into that Xiaoyan pattern. So there might be an aspect of treatment of, the first aspect would be if it was a Xiaoyan thing, to just use a harmonising the Xiaoyan formula, herbal medicine formula to do that. It can be complicated. It's not as easy. It's not as easy as like there's just this one formula, try that, and then it won't go away. There might be a process that we need to go through. So depending on what would we feel on the pulse. Yeah, so the left side of your body shows the function, and the right side shows the material part. Now, in the system of Chinese medicine that I practice, the pulse diagnosis is a lineage system of pulse. So it's based on what Zhang Jing wrote about in Shanghai Yin and the Jing Way, which is the 2 books he wrote. It's based on that. So there might be lines in those texts that say when a person has this condition, their pulse should be like this, or in the Sun position. So there's 3 positions on your pulse, and you also have 2 sides of your pulse. Now, in my system that I do, the ICAM system, it's what's called a lineage system. So it means that a person has passed it down through those lineage, through the generation. And so part of me learning that system is agreeing to keep that knowledge in the lineage. So we actually can't, it's a proprietary knowledge, right? So we can't sort of tell, and also it's reckless. That's one of the reasons why it's very taboo to sort of break that lineage thing, because people could take that knowledge and hurt themselves with that knowledge. There's an idea, probably not just Chinese medicine, but other things, like a small amount of knowledge is much more dangerous than a large, an appropriate amount of knowledge, right? So, you know, people go off half cocked, oh, I think I've got this, I'm going to give myself these herbs, and it's wrong, causing a lot of detriment. There's hundreds of lines in the Shanghai law about detrimental treatment. Oh, the person was inappropriately perched, the person was given this, the person was given that. As in, it's not Chinese herbal medicine isn't without consequence if it's used inappropriately. And even a good practitioner, a well-meaning practitioner, can use things, you know, without like, you know, even me, I don't get it right every single time with patients, even checking their pulses, right? So so the lineage system of pulse diagnosis that we do is really more, it correlates certain herbal methods to the pulse feelings, right? And that's something that's unique to it. It's not part of all of Chinese medicine. But certainly part of classical Chinese medicine is this idea of being able to feel the yang, the yin aspects, like in a very broad sense. There's a lot of classical systems that kind of use the same idea. So yeah, there's not just one classical medicine system. There's several. So there's all different lineages, but they come back to that same champagne line or the Jingwei text and using those formulas. So let's say aside from the pulse, like for sweating, it makes sense to treat the yang before the yin and to try to harmonise with Xiao Yang first. And that would be a very common treatment methodology that a practitioner would use. And then once that's done, that may be all the person needs if that was the only pattern that was there. But if they were truly deficient and they just flared to the Xiao Yang, you wouldn't know that until they might come back. The symptoms might be better but not properly resolved. And then you feel the pulse and there's really a deficiency there, then you use a different formula to address that. And that's kind of how classical Chinese medicine works for herbs to treat that sort of stuff. So the best advice I could give you would be to contact a practitioner who can feel your pulse like that, and then that'd be the most accurate way. So you can send me an email and I'll help you find someone, if there is someone near you, an ICEAM practitioner, if that's the road that you want to go down. There's people in the UK, US, Australia, the world that do it. So if you can get the pulse diagnosis, that's the most accurate way of getting the treatment. I see patients without feeling their pulse when that's all that they can do. That's the best thing that they can do. Sometimes my own patients, like because of COVID, I've done more telehealth things, so I might have felt their pulse before. If it's just symptomatically something that's happened, then we can prescribe herbs based on that. But when it's like a constitutional type of thing going on, so someone's had this for a long time, it's a lot more accurate to feel the pulse than to just sort of not do that. I've still gotten results with people without feeling the pulse, but it's less, I find it more reliable to be able to check their pulse. So, I'd rather people get the best thing they can have. So I see patients all over the world for consultations, talking about diet and lifestyle stuff more, and then maybe have herbs prescribed and I can post herbs over. But if it's possible to have them seen by a different person that can check their pulse, I'd rather them do that. So yeah, hopefully that's useful and helpful somewhat. We might just end the stream now. Nearly lunchtime. My time, and it's probably time night for you somewhere around the world. If there's any other questions, then speak now, or anything else, we're going to end it. Thank you so much. I'm glad this stream has worked good today and not stop and start. second go. Please sign up for the book chapter and join into the 10,000 subscriber challenge. So I'd love to see people subscribe to the channel more. And yeah, I want to grow the channel and help as many people as I can. So yeah, you can find out more about the courses that I'm doing. There's one starting this Sunday, and that's on the diet therapy, better gut health with Chinese medicine. That's 3-week course. Just a mini course. Price range is quite affordable. And then the other course is a longer one. All the prices are in Australian dollars, so they're cheaper if you're in the US. It's about a third less of the price, and same as pounds, much less. Awesome. All right. Well, have a great week. I'll be trying to do these more regularly. But Wednesday morning for me seems to be a good time, so I think I'll probably stick with this time slot, and I'll probably do this once a week. And so we'll be seeing you again next week, or on another video soon.